and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Balance.
Here.
Dollinger. Here. Gould. Harris. Moran. O'Donnell. Hunter. Here. Bailey Berry. Here. Mayor.
Here.
We also have the books. Yes.
All right. Well, looks like we're under summertime skeleton crew here.
Right.
Yeah. All right, I need approval of the minutes for our committee meeting on April 6th.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Got a
Opposed,
question.
same sign.
Got a question.
Go ahead.
Do you have a quorum or do I? Am I making up?
We have a quorum.
You have without me?
Without you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
We're in good shape here. Okay. All right. I think old business should be on top of new business here. And pardon me?
You can just skip down.
Yeah, I know. So the mission statement, you guys had a chance to take a look at that. And just to review, to create opportunities which promote and improve the business environment for economic development through county policies and procedures that foster desirable business growth while improving the quality of life for all residents in Will County. Everybody's okay with that? Okay, so can I get a motion that we accept this? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
We're going to be submitting paperwork probably today or tomorrow.
Okay,
And
perfect.
they, under our scoring, they will qualify for an abatement, but we'll submit all that through Larry's office.
And then we'll get a chance to review it.
Right.
There may be times in the future, and we just had a discussion on this, there may be times in the future where timeline is paramount in a decision. So we may actually bring something to a committee with the executive's office here, allowing both of us to hear it at the same time. But at this time, we're going to go ahead and have the executive review this and then put it back to the committee at its earliest convenience. So we may need to do a meeting in August at some point, a little quicker than we normally do. So with that, I'd like to ask John to come up and kind of give us a little update on some of our projects that we have going on. Big CV, and you want to bring up your new VP?
And notice how we dress.
You know what? I thought you were going to uniforms.
We're going to uniform.
It's so you just can't get rid of that Catholic school upbringing, can you?
It helps.
It does. I didn't have to worry about it.
That's right.
It was pretty simple.
I used to love going to my daughter's, hey, just put on your skirt and go, would you?
There we go.
So first of all, yes, I want to introduce Doug Pryor. He's our new Vice President of Economic Development. And Doug's role will be to run the CED's Economic Development Program, which includes business retention, business recruitment, as well as working through all of the various assistance programs that we have, whether it be information in buildings, population, workforce, and of course, administration of the tax abatement program.
He said turn on the mic. Brent said turn on your microphone.
Okay.
Start with the Catholic school.
All right. So.
See, my voice is loud enough, Grant didn't have to tell me.
All right, so do I need to repeat
Yes.
that? Okay, so welcome. I want to introduce Doug Pryor, our Vice President of Economic Development. Doug's role will, Doug's role will be essentially to run the Will County CED's Economic Development Program, which includes business retention. In fact, we're restructuring our business survey program, retention survey program, all business recruitment activities, as well as providing the various elements of assistance that we provide companies when they're looking at Will County, either to expand or locate here, information on sites and buildings, information on demographics, workforce, packaging incentives, and of course running and administering the Will County tax abatement program. So he's off and running. His prior position was as the county administrator for Grundy County. So he's already has some credibility. Not that you didn't before. So with that, just a few things on projects. First of all, as I reported to my governance committee this morning, our business activity level is almost, well, it's almost side by side with what we were doing last year, and I tallied up about 50 or 51 new or active projects that we're involved with at some level. And last year we closed out with just over 80, with a success rate of almost 20% in terms of closing. So that's, in our business, that's a very good measure. You know, the measurements are jobs, investment, increased tax base, but when you're looking at how many projects an organization handles in a year, being able to close between 15 and 20% is a very high mark, and we've been fortunate to be able to have the kind of businesses to work with that we have. You may have seen that Amazon announced their 5th facility in Will County. Actually, they didn't announce it. Crest Hill announced it.
Thank you, Crest Hill.
Well, you know, this is one of those worst kept secrets. We've been working with Amazon for over 3 years now, and you know, it's one thing to try and keep things under wraps. It's another thing to try and keep it under wraps when everybody knows about it. And that's a little bit of what was happening here. But they started negotiations on this building last December. It's a spec building in Crest Hill Industrial Park, and I'm not exactly sure when they executed the list, but I know they've been in working on the building for probably 2.5 to 3 weeks. So this is a pure sort facility, which will take packages and items that are coming from the larger fulfillment centers and then putting them in smaller delivery packaging to be taken directly to the market vis-a-vis UPS, FedEx.
Drones.
What's that?
Drones?
Not yet. Not yet. Not till the federal government figures out
How we can fly that air traffic.
and I think this facility will start seeing more Amazon-owned delivery trucks. I wouldn't be surprised. This will also improve same-day delivery on certain items for folks in Will County, which you can already get for some items, but I think this is the type of facility, not that we need, some of us need it right away. So the IKEA facility, I don't know if any of you have had a chance to go out and look at that building on Laramie Road. They're probably a little over halfway done with that building. It's a $1.2 million structure. It's over $100 million, and a third of that building is 120 feet tall.
Wow.
And the middle section is that section, and it essentially is a non-human part of the building. Unlike Amazon, which they're using 2,000 workers and 800,000 square feet in Joliet at one of their facilities. IKEA will be running this facility, 1.2 million, with probably around 200 people. A lot of automation. So what's going up in the center of the building, they put the racking system in first, and then they're wrapping the skin around to finish it. So it's a fascinating project.
It's like building your house around your grand piano because you're not going to move it.
Exactly. Very, very similar.
Yeah.
So we're excited about that. Unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know something about the Compass Business Park in Elwood. Again, this is a project that has been in the works since the middle of last summer.
And this is considered North Point?
This is North Point. North Point is the developer. They are out of Kansas City. They've got projects in the south and southwest, and their biggest project to date is a very similar project to what they're talking about in Elwood, outside of the BNSF intermodal yard in Kansas City. So they have a significant working relationship with the BNSF. Probably one of the reasons they're looking at this site. So they've started the business of putting together, assembling about 2,200 acres. The preliminary plan shows upwards of 25 million square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
25 million?
Yes. What's interesting about this project, the big concern in that part of the county, and one of the reasons the Strong Road rail crossing was closed was for safety issues and trucks on Route 53 in conflict with the GI funerals and some other things going on in the day one. So what's interesting is the only way in and out of this project is a bridge over 53 and the railroad at Strong Road. So the project will be totally self-contained. Access from other points will be allowed by safety first providers, employees, service trucks, and that sort of thing. The heavy lift on freight movement will be in and out just over this bridge, so it'll keep to preserve the integrity of Route 53.
John, how's that project impacting or being incorporated into our freight study? And is this looking at needing additional alternative roads or other kind of
Good question.
support?
Good question, Chuck. This project, as well as the CSX project in Crete, the timing of our freight mobility study is very interesting. So the mobility plan will give us, governmental units, developers, logistics companies, zoning administrators, some tools on how to evaluate projects like this, how to assess the impacts, and then what are some of the things that you need to do either from a traffic management standpoint, an infrastructure investment standpoint, workforce development standpoint. What are those things to accommodate projects of this size? It really isn't going to give us a scorecard on whether or not a project like this is, gets an A or a D. That's not the intent of the plan, but it is to give some guidance and some assistance. So I think the timing is good. The developer has not submitted any formal plans or proposals to Elwood yet. It's still very schematic and preliminary. And as you know, the freight plan, we're rolling that out over the next 35, 40 days. So there will be quite a bit of information in the plan that can be used in taking a look at this project and other projects.
I mean, and do you see this freight plan being able to, allow Elwood to go to North Point and say, look, we need you to put roads here, here, and here, or it needs to feed this way or that? I mean,
it will provide best practices. It'll provide ideal sort of traffic management principles, including infrastructure, but you won't be able to score a specific project by some punch list in the plan. It's just not designed to do that. I think the information in the plan, the village leadership can use in their evaluation.
and that's my point, is that they're going to be able to use this information
Absolutely.
to be able to say, this is going to be the impact. In order to minimize impact either on our local roads or our county roads or our state roads, we need you to help us with this, because 25 million square feet built, that's going to be holding a lot of stuff. And it's going to be distributing a lot of materials throughout this whole region.
Right. So the interesting thing about this project is really it's designed to push freight traffic directly to the interstate via Arsenal Road. Now the question is whether the roads between Arsenal Road and the project itself can handle this new traffic.
Right.
But I think as part of the development review process, the developer will do traffic studies and traffic engineering, so they'll have to produce this information. And again, I think the plan will have some guidance in terms of what's good planning, what's bad planning.
Well, hopefully these numbers will also increase our ability to go for federal dollars, because of the volume that's going to be, just the 3 projects you talked about now is going to put an amazing stress on our system.
Yeah, well, we already have, as this plan and the study has shown, there are, not significant portions of our infrastructure, but there are parts of our transportation infrastructure that are under stress right now. And I think when people look at, for example, the deficient bridges in the county, not county bridges alone, but the whole concept of, we haven't invested in some critical bridge infrastructure that we should have. So that will provide us the argument, if you will, saying, hey, we need some help here to fund this.
Well, and bridge, not only the bridge, but feeding any more traffic of trucks on the 53.
Well, certainly at Laraway and north of Laraway.
Yeah.
It is a hot zone for safety issues and traffic and accidents. And so again, the plan demonstrates all that. So for example, if you were going to build a new intermodal logistics center, with a couple million square feet of distribution space, and the only way in and out was going to be that 5380 access, the community overseeing or reviewing that proposal could probably argue, look, the plan says we're already at capacity here. Your studies aren't showing any additional capacity being added. It may be a project that we have to put on hold until we have either more information on the impacts or some investment is made in the infrastructure. The CED is not in the business of picking winners and losers, okay? We don't think the plan is going to be in the business of picking winners and losers, but it is going to give some guidance on how to avoid negative impacts as we continue. As you can see, these companies are still coming here, and it's very difficult to understand not only the short-term impacts, but the medium and long-term impacts.
Perfect. Can you give us an idea of the 51 current projects that you're working on? What kind of categories? I mean, you have a list of major categories that you guys work on, from the health industries and that kind of stuff.
It's across the board. I think it's safe to say the majority, not probably 30 or 40% are in the transportation, distribution, logistic vein. But we've got a number of food projects. We do have some manufacturing projects. Everything from truck stops to a small medical facility. So it's across the board.
Other questions by any?
I have something like that. I don't guess.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah.
Do you have anything?
Anything else, John?
CSX, I think we're all up to speed on that. There really isn't. There hasn't been anything new. As far as we know, they're moving along with engineering on that site, but there's still been no formal announcement of that project. They bought the land, but we don't have any plans. There hasn't been any sort of formal announcement on that. So I think
They're doing a study out there. Is that in process?
I don't know what kind of studies being done, or I assume the engineers are doing some traffic studies, but beyond that, I don't know. And the last major infrastructure project is the Hobolt Bridge. And the Hobolt Bridge is, still under review by the parties that are involved in this, the city of Joliet, Will County, and Centerpoint and IDOT. And everybody's been sort of waiting for Centerpoint to complete their engineering and traffic studies and to move forward with this public-private partnership. So it's moving forward from everybody that we talk to.
John, just kind of on another topic, as we heard that we just put past our mission, and one of the statements in our mission is to make sure that the policies that we have here in Will County are business-friendly, working on economic growth and development. Not to say that it should in any way impede, our policies should not be in any way harmful to our citizens, but we should make sure that our policies are leading the way in helping growth in business. I know we'll be reaching out to you guys as time goes on about that.
Right.
If there are things that you run across, this is not the policy committee, that's our executive committee, I believe, or legislative and policy maybe. But we would like to be able to hear and make recommendations to the policy committee itself. So, and I know that we have, I know you do. So,
I'll be glad to.
we'd like to be able to have you, provide us some information as you guys run across it.
Right. And that's one of the things that we address in our boot camp for economic development for elected and appointed officials is, does your policies for managing and regulating development match up with your goals of development? And I think, oftentimes communities don't make that connection. The mayor's out there, come to my town, we love you, we're going to do everything for you, and they go to the building permit department and it takes them 2 months to get a building.
Right.
So
Or
those
some of these permits, some of the regulations that are embedded in our codes, because we've adopted a national code because somebody did the heavy lifting, and then we have to pick out those pieces and parts that, like sprinkler systems in residential homes. I think I came across our desk once or twice.
I think so.
So
I put a hose in my room.
that's always a good thing. You gotta have it be able to put on your spigot inside.
No,
It's easier to get to.
We'd be glad to share information on that. And I'm sure you've got some experience with that.
I do that particular issue, actually, sprinklers and homes issue.
Perfect. Steve?
When we did the building code update, that was, I think, 2 years ago, I wanted to go through every building code and look at it and see if it was okay. Land use didn't want to do that. After numerous meetings of arguing and back and forth, they discarded the idea, and then they told us that everything is fine. Now we're doing the zoning update, and I wanted to go over every one individually again. And they said, no, the committee voted to go along with how they wanted to do it. Fine. So they bring stuff to us that at the land use meeting, and it's basically a hindrance to business. So we're in a county, we're saying we want business to come, and we want to promote business, but we're going to change our rules to make it so it's harder for you to operate. And each meeting now, there's a new argument, and it's a new deal. Like I mentioned to you earlier, not this meeting, the one before that, was brought up, we need to rezone and make new rules for home businesses. And that was in regard to one case that a guy had a pole barn that was built, and they gave him a permit to build it, and then he started operating a construction business out of it in a small residential area. Well, he was following the law, whatever, but if they wanted to stop it, they should have stopped it before they gave him permission to build an 1,800 square foot pole barn, instead of a garage. But they mentioned that a home business should have only one employee. And so I said, well, that means that a husband or a wife is the only one that can operate that home business. The children can't work there. You can't have an outside person. And then they said they don't want to have a car or a van or a truck with a decal in a driveway or the street. Okay, in other words, what they're saying, they didn't say it, but what they really are saying is we want to eliminate small businesses operating out of a home. And you said that it's a big portion of Will County. So not going to these land use, not following what land use is trying to do, because they're a bureaucracy, and bureaucracies just want to expand and grow. And that's all land use is trying to do. Their job in their mind is to make more rules, more regulations, and make it so that they have more work to do. Our job is to say, no, we want businesses to come here, we want people to thrive, and it's not about government. So what I'm getting at is when land use is going through these zoning things, everyone needs to be there, because they didn't even want to give us the original documents for what they're talking about, because they knew that we would be saying, no, forget it, we'll leave it alone.
So let me
So
address a little bit of this.
we really have to follow this, because we could pass something on that committee and go to
Can I
the
give you a
board and
procedural
pass, and
thing?
we're all screwed.
Let's talk about this from a procedural standpoint then. There's no way this committee is going to go through all of land
Because
use regulations.
we need to know what they're
Listen,
doing.
Hold on a second. I'm not disagreeing with you. And I would like to have this open for discussion with the committee here on where they see our role and stuff is with this. I mean, I have a view of what potentially could happen here. I mean, again, I don't expect this committee to take the land use and start rereading this with the filter in mind that what's the impact on business. That would just, I don't think that's appropriate for what we have going on here.
But if we don't do it, Chuck, who will?
Steve, however, if you have, or anybody on this committee has a policy that needs to be reviewed, like you're in a land use committee meeting, I think it's very appropriate to call me as the chairman and say, this is an issue that we have going on, I'd like to have this put on our agenda for discussion. And just like John could, if he hears or sees a policy, or the real estate, folks hear or see a policy that they would like us to review, then we can bring this in and have a discussion, not from the land use view or prism, but from an economic development prism.
That's what I'm getting at.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. We have to be careful that we're not screwing our businesses.
Right, and so I think we all agree, that's why we're kind of on this committee here. So comments about this, folks? Thoughts?
Well, I think that, and I would sure love to hear what John and Doug had to say about this, but I think that so that the ad hoc committee and the land use committee are not in conflict with one another, I think there has to be more of a, what we call piecemeal. I think that in not as a whole, but individual cases that came before you. Steve, I did want to ask you, were you referring to that company in New Lenox that was living in a residential area and they built, was that the one you're referring to? That New Lenox case, you remember that?
Yeah,
That was
that's
the
one. But because of that, I think they want to do it anyway, but they're trying to use that as an example of why you have to make these special rules.
Right.
Well, you don't make a law for one person or 10 people. There's 750,000 people in Will County, and you got 10 people violating, not violating the law, they're actually following the law, but they're taking advantage of it. So you're going to change the law for the rest of them? That's
For
not.
500,000?
Well, that's why I just think so that it won't be a conflict, that we need to look at them individual, because I remember that case. And I agree with you on that particular case, but that doesn't apply to all.
Right, exactly.
And I think it would be very interesting to hear what you all have to say, John, because those are situations we want to encourage business in Will County. That's what CED is here for. But we don't want to penalize as well as small business.
Well, they talked about zoning cases, then we argue about it, and then the next thing you know, they don't talk about it again. They bring another, this last thing was rental units, and it was 51% of 34,000 properties were going to be affected. It's over 17,000 properties have 2 violations according to HUD, and we didn't even pass HUD standards. And they're talking about doing a study, spending $25,000 to see what they can do to go after the land use department. I mean, but this affects business. There's, if you're a person that owns rental property, and a law's passed here, and our economic development committee isn't paying attention to it. Now, you own a business, you're going to have all your property inspected under HUD rules and the 2012 building codes. And then they didn't say it, but I'm assuming they're going to make it every year. And then I was told that, and it changes. And this is why we need to actually all pay attention.
So from that standpoint, I think it seems like we're all under agreement. As we come across policies that could be in conflict with economic development, that they could be brought before this committee for discussion and review. And then if we need to get other experts and stuff to have that conversation. Because I agree, I'm not one that makes laws or wants to pass a law that's impacting one event. It's got to be something that is transferable to the system as a whole, to improve the system. And but there could be these one-up cases. We have one-up cases all the time where there's someone that might be able to make a good argument for it to be different than what our policies are. That's why we have committees. This kind of leads me to an area in and John, I'm just going to bring this up to get it on the record for that discussion that we had earlier. I had a manufacturer that came to me and was talking about OSHA and EPA and how they have an internal review evaluation, and they are basically the police, the judge, the jury, and the executioner all in one process, where if they come in and find a violation in your facility, they then can give you an option of going to their mediator, paying the whole thing, maybe doing a reduced fine. And so I think sometimes some of our manufacturers feel that they are being held hostage by our federal government. And not that we can necessarily impact the federal government, but I think from an economic development, that becomes an important piece that we can show that Will County is wanting to make sure that there's an equal playing field for everybody and that nobody's being unjustly adjudicated and served in this county. And so I'd like to maybe have an opportunity to open up some discussion and whether we can address this with some of our congressmen and see. I mean, it would have to be definitely dealt at that level from a federal standpoint. We are fortunate that we have a professor of OSHA sitting at the table here, since John does teach classes in that on that topic. And so, John, I don't know if you want to have a comment. I think I've already stepped into that fire.
So, first of all, going back to your local policies and laws affecting small business, you know, I think the number one thing that business wants is consistency, and the second thing is clarity. So if you have a law, whether it's a good law or a bad law,
be clear about it.
Be clear and be fair on the enforcement. You know, the arbitrary enforcement of local regulations and rules is what gets municipalities and counties into a lot of trouble. If the law is bad because it's not having the impact or it's affecting whether or not you can be successful in recruiting businesses, or it's slowing down that process, change the law, change the policy, change the regulation.
And I think that's kind of this, you know, whether it's local here at the county, state level, or as I was just referring to, the federal level.
Right. You know, so, you know, the fact of the matter is most businesses, by far the vast majority of them, want to operate honestly and legally. I mean, that's...
They don't want to hassle.
Well, and it's not just, they want to operate legally, and they want the enforcers of these laws to be able to speak very clear to them about what the requirements are and whether or not they meet those requirements. That's where a lot of local agencies, quite frankly, fall down, or they become arbitrary. What was good for the neighbor in terms of a 5-foot setback for his garage, the next guy knows the building inspector and his building is built right on the property line. I mean, that happens all the time. And those are the things that should drive all of us nuts. The small business issue, regulating small business in houses and whatever, you know, that's a tough issue. We've got over 20,000 businesses in Will County. By far, the majority of them are 4 or 5 or less employees. And guess where a lot of those businesses are? They're in homes. They're professional services, they're tax preparers, they're computer programmers, they're people making the next widget in their basement. I mean, you know, whether or not there's a role for government at that level, obviously if it impacts property values, impacts the quality of life of people around you, impacts traffic flows or patterns in residential areas, there are laws to control that. But, you know, peeking into people's windows, you know, seeing 2 computers in a room and saying, there's a small business in there, we have to shut this down. That's not, I mean, that's crazy.
Magnetic sign on his car says that this is this.
So anyway, that's all I'm going to say on that.
No, we really need to help the small business people.
Steve,
Right?
let him finish.
No, that's all I'm going to say on that. I mean,
Anything else on the federal?
As far as the federal stuff is concerned, you know, since we talked on the hallway, Chuck, you know, one good source for that issue in terms of arguing whether or not federal policy or regulation or implementation is good or fair is done through a lot of associations. The National Association of Manufacturers, the Petroleum Association. They have very strong lobbying groups that address a lot of these policy and regulatory issues.
That's a really good.
There's also some at the state level. The Illinois Manufacturers Association is a great organization. They spend 90% of their time lobbying the folks in Springfield. So before we start trying to figure out what that path is,
Right.
I
That's
think,
a good idea,
I think
John.
we may want to reflect on, okay, who's out there sort of taking care of this right now? I know we wouldn't have the resources to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'd rather lobby Senator Durbin on roads and not on, whether or not the widget is standing in the right direction.
You know what? He better have the capacity to take both of those
Well-
lobbies. I'm just saying, but knowing Durbin, maybe not. I don't know. We'll go.
I didn't say anything bad about that.
I didn't say you did.
So that's my take.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions for John?
Before you go, can I go back to CSX for a minute in our District 1? Would your office, you or Doug, know if they were doing any type of studies out there, whether it's the traffic, environment? Would you all know that? Would they contact your office?
Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. I'll tell you what, we're having lunch with the mayor tomorrow.
Oh.
Why don't we find out what he knows?
Okay.
That's off the record, by the way.
Okay. Edit that, Grant. Okay, thank you.
So, and we can call them, we can call them directly too.
Okay,
But
find out, right.
we've not been aware
Okay.
of any studies.
I just wondered if anything was going on. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
John, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Okay. Jim, I hear Nick's on vacation.
Yeah. Right here too.
Come on up.
And just briefly, and it was very helpful meeting before this committee meeting with Doug and John on sort of a few things in the pipeline and make sure they get implemented. Because we've got a couple of agreements that have been executed. County boards approved it. But what triggers the implementation of the abatement is the certificate of occupancy. So under our agreements, the owner/developer gets that to our office. We forward that to the county clerk's office, and then they implement the abatement. And so Doug and John and I talked about a couple of projects. The Cadence project, we're still waiting for the certificate of occupancy, and I think that hopefully will be forthcoming. We'll get it to the county clerk. They have a new person, Brett Hitchens, who's going to be working on the implementation. And also Cap Barbell, that's an approved, executed agreement that we're waiting for the certificate of occupancy. I think they're still, in talking to John, maybe some more construction, so that maybe is down the line. And then there's Greuling Electric, which we're waiting for the executed agreement. So actually it was helpful that we had time before this meeting to talk about where we're at and make sure that we're working well. And we do work well, but some of these things we don't control, because when a building is completed and the certificate of occupancy is issued, let's say it's by the village of Monique,
Right.
we don't automatically know that.
Right.
And sometimes, the business owner, they're involved in other things, and this gets sort of shuffled to the side. So those are three agreements that you've approved as
Over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
You're bringing up, I mean, we've had this discussion in the past about how even though we approve these abatements, some of these businesses don't even go after them. They don't do the paperwork. They've done some of the setup in the beginning, and then they just don't fill out the rest of the paperwork in order to be able to actually execute the abatements. I'd be curious to see, taking a look at where we are with some of these big projects that we've had in the past. Have these folks taken the tax breaks, where we are with some of those tax breaks falling off, and starting to now collect money and where they are in the process. I think one of the big issues that we had here, and I don't know that we've really put together the check and balance to check that, is that we've approved abatements with certain criteria. Just like setbacks and land use, you set up some criteria and you prove that they do something, and when you go back and check, they didn't do it, and now there's consequences for that. I don't know that we've really taken a look at some of those abatements historically in a long time to say whether they've actually approved or whether they followed through, like they were gonna have so many employees, they were gonna have, so much square foot, their business was gonna be doing X, Y, Z. Is that something, Jim, that the executive's office could put together a little historical? We don't have to go back too far, but some of these abatements are 5 and 10 years abatements.
Sure.
That's about the average, isn't it? About 5, Jim? Or
5 years max.
5 years max? Okay.
Well, and I think a couple of years ago, we did something going back in time and saw just what you were talking about, Chuck,
Right.
in terms of some, that they haven't asked for the abatement in terms of for a certificate of occupancy. It's frankly, it's their option. I mean, if they don't want to do
Right,
it,
it's not
the paperwork. And corporations, people get bought out, things change, but I think that's something that we certainly can go back in our records and do a little spreadsheet, confer with John and Doug, and see where we are, because a lot of times, these get approved, and if they don't send, for instance, a certificate of occupancy, it's not going to be implemented. But in terms of the other enforcement actions, not enforcement actions, but in terms of implementation of those criteria, I think we can meet with John's office.
And I think you might want to, Nick may have already started to put something like that together, because I know we've had this conversation in the past. And so to be able to just see what's already, just build on and see where we're at with stuff, I think it'd be a good report to have, because we've got a lot of new folks here, to even be able to help them get an idea of what the process is.
Yeah, no, that's, it's, I think that would be helpful, and we certainly can go back and coordinate it with the CED and report perhaps at, an upcoming meeting or next meeting.
Karen, can you make sure that gets put on our agenda, please? That we'll have an update on previous tax abatements and where we are in the process. And then we may do something in August here, so as soon as you all have a time frame, let me know, and we'll see if we can't plug this in and have another meeting. Okay,
Fine?
all right. Anything else, Jim?
Nope, that's it.
Tourism, I think. Well, I'll let Nick play with all that.
Nick, he's on vacation, he can deal with tourism.
Yeah.
I'm working today, I'm wearing a tie, I'm not.
I like the tie, by
In
the
a
way.
polo, thank you, in a polo shirt. Don't get from Brother James. But anyway, unless there's any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. I have no other new business. Any public comments? I have no report here. Any comments from committee members? Thoughts?
It was fun. I haven't been one in a while. It was fun.
That's why we only do it periodic. We make sure the agenda has something to play with.
I like that.
We don't want to read for just meeting's sake. When there's no executive sessions, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Second. Any discussion? We are out of here. Thank you all very much.